this is going to be a short video on how to adjust the grind on a KitchenAid model A-9 coffee mill. So supposedly that you ended up taking this apart for some reason, and in the end this screw here in the middle became loose and it came out of adjustment. It'll mess the grind up. So this is going to show how to adjust this to try to get it back to the way it's supposed to be. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and take the top off, and we want to take the bottom grinder off. So I'm going to call this one the bottom grinder, and this one will be the top, since in the end this is what goes together probably about like that and spins, and this is what ends up grinding. So we want to make sure that we have the right distance between the two so we can get it right. And so when we're all said and done, we can go by the settings on this ring, and that's all we'll need. So one of the first things I want to explain is that this center screw is for the purpose of adjusting this bottom one up and down. Okay, so might be hard to see, but this screw goes all the way through. The screw goes, might be hard to see, but the screw goes all the way through. And if I screw it in, as I screw it in, the screw goes in deeper. And so then what happens is, since this sits this way, the screw head ends up pushing against, or the screw base ends up pushing against the top of the shaft. Okay, like so. And so as it pushes against it and you turn it, it will raise this up or down. Okay, so that's the basis behind this whole thing. And there's no, obviously these things are really old, so there's no definite instructions on how to do this. So, but this should help. So what I'm going to do is just show you how I do it. I really don't see how there's any other way, but I don't have an instruction book for this, and I know this works since over here I've got some examples. So I'm just going to show you what I did to make it work. So the first thing that I'm going to do is put the screw in. Now if you look down in there, there's a small lip because the shaft doesn't go all the way through. So if I take the screw out, and I put this on there, actually I won't do it because it's a pain in the butt to get out without the screw. But if we put this down onto the shaft, it'll sink down to the bottom and it'll stop. It's because there's a lip inside that hole that the shaft will rest against. Okay, so I'm going to put this screw in as far as it'll go, and I'm going to look at it on the inside. I just don't want it to go past that lip. I want it to be close, you know, maybe a little under, but I'm going to put the screw into that point because when I put this on, I want it to go all the way to the bottom. So I'm just going to line up the keyhole with the key in the shaft, that little key sticking out the side of the shaft down there, which does move. So I'm going to put this on and make sure it goes all the way down. So I'm going to turn it with my finger and hold it with this finger and turn it with this hand until I feel it hit. So I'll loosen it up again, and I'm going to turn it until it stops. So now I know that the screw is hitting the top of the shaft. Okay, so from doing some previous work on this, I'm going to tell you, because every little machine might be a little different. Okay, and so this is what's going to help you figure it out. So take your screwdriver, hold the bottom. Actually, I'm going to turn it this way. Make sure you line up the screw with something. So I'm going to line mine up because it has this odd shape. I'm going to line up the long end with the arrow that goes on the front of our KitchenAid. So I'm going to kind of, it doesn't have to be exact, it's just a reference. So I'm going to turn it to the right clockwise 3 times, 3 revolutions. 1, 2, 3. And as you do that, you'll feel this rising up with your left finger, or with this finger that's holding it. You'll feel the bottom grinder going up. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down a little bit. Actually, it doesn't need to be, but I'm just going to put it down a little bit. So you're going to do that. And this is how you're going to do your first check. For the grinder top, we need to pay attention to this raised section. Okay, this is what is the stop. For when we turn this from coarse to fine, this is the stop. Because the little screw that goes here in the back, that's what rides here in this channel. And when you turn it one way, it'll hit the screw and stop, which will keep you from turning it too far. Or if you turn it all the way to the other side, the screw will hit this side and stop. Okay, and that's what keeps it between coarse and fine. So, but we want to pay attention to this also when we do this. So I'm going to go ahead and screw this back on until it just kind of pretty much stops. Right there. Now, as you can see, possibly, here's that raised section. And here's the edge of this side right here. Right there. And then here's the screw stop. So I want to take this to the finest setting possible. So that means I want this lip just to this side of the screw. So I'm going to turn it to this way. One more till it clicks into the groove. Because those detents that you see, I want to take it to the one that's closest to that screw. So if I had the screw in, this would be as far as I could turn it. So I want it set right there. It has to be exactly at that spot. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if the bottom grinder will spin. Okay, and so you might, to avoid twisting this or whatever, you might just take a small screwdriver or a small pick and see if you can put it down and hit the bottom grinder and turn this. Well, you hear that noise? That means that the bottom grinder is touching the top grinder and they're hitting, which we do not want. Okay, so that means the bottom is set too high. So go ahead, remove this. Go ahead and line this up to how you had it before. So I have it lined up with this arrow on the front of the KitchenAid. This little arrow. I'm going to line it up, and I'm going to go ahead. So remember, I turned it out 3 full turns. So what I want to do is I want to take it back, and I'm going to do a quarter turn. Okay, so I'm going to turn it counterclockwise, a quarter turn. Push down to make sure it fully seats. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that a little bit. So now we're at 2 3/4 turn. So go ahead and put this part back on again. Okay. Now I've noticed that based on this, I've turned it a little further, which means I was successful in making the grinder go down. But I'm going to back it up. See that raised part section right through here? Okay, so I want to turn it back to where I had it before, to where that, right there, to where that lip is on this side of the screw. So if I were to put the screw in right now, I could. And so right now it's at the finest setting. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to put my screwdriver in and see if I hear anything. I don't hear anything. Sometimes I'm saying do your screwdriver instead of turning this, because if you turn this, it might loosen up and you'll lose your adjustment. So I just push it with this. Unless you want to tighten this nut down every time, but it's up to you. So I hear nothing. So this is spinning freely, okay? So what you could do at this point, since it's spinning freely and they're not touching, that's good. We do not want them to touch or you will ruin your grinder. Go ahead, take your top off. Pull this out. And then hold the screw and then make sure that this is tightened down. A regular wrench, this one's a 3/8. That one looks better. A 3/8, put it over the top and just snug it up. Okay? I might have turned this a teeny bit. So you kind of really want to make sure that that screw is held in place. So what you should probably do is put it over it, hold that, and then try to turn it. But you want to keep this screw is pretty much where you had it, so at 2 3/4 turns. So then what you'd go ahead and do is you'd line it back up over the shaft. Now that we have it tight, make sure it's all the way down. Put this back on. Okay. And you'd put it back to where we had this set up before. And if you notice on the front, the arrow is to the fine. Okay, so this is going to be, at the way it's up right now, this will be the finest setting that we have. Now at this point, go ahead and put some coffee beans in your jar, set it up, and then go ahead and run it on fine, just where it is right here. And then as it comes out, you can judge if you like that one, if it's way too fine, or if it's perfect. If it's perfect, you're done. You've done adjusted it. Then you're going to go ahead and take your little back screw, and you're going to put that screw here in the back, snug it down, and you're done. Okay? In my case, I went ahead and did it, and I still found that this was too close, and it was like almost powdery, if that's what you like. I don't. So, well, I don't drink coffee, but I didn't want it that fine. So what I'm going to do is take it another 1/4 turn. I'm going to go ahead and take the top off. I'm going to pull this out, and because I want to be sure, I'm going to go ahead and start all over again. I'm going to loosen the screw up and take this down to just on the other side of that lip. And I'm going to start over. So I'm going to line it back up over the shaft, put it down all the way, and I'm going to turn it till it stops, because I want it just to the top of the shaft. Boom, that's it. Now it's tight. So I know I went three full turns to the beginning, and that was too tight. I just did 2 3/4, and it was too fine. So I'm going to go ahead and do 2 1/2 turns. So now I'm starting over from 0, so if there was any play, I just got rid of it because I started over. So holding the bottom grinder down, I'm going to turn it 1, 2 1/2 turns. And once again, as I'm turning it with the screwdriver, I can feel this bottom raising up. So I'm going to hold those, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten this just snug with my finger. And I'm going to go ahead and put the top back on. Turn it till it pretty much kind of stops right there. Now I know I'm going to have to turn it backwards, because this fine is should end up being here by the front where the arrow is. And to do so, I would also be lining up my stopper. So I'm going to turn this back, loosen it back. See the stopper? Can't really tell in this video. Here's this side of the stopper, here's the other side. And I want to line up this other side, just this side of the screw. Boom, right there. So now it's lined up. The arrow is lined up with fine. So here I go. Go ahead and fill the jar back up with some coffee beans. Put the jar back on top and give it a test run. For me, I found that 2.5 worked. I was happy with the 2.5. So just to further test it, with the jar on and everything else, I went ahead and adjusted it to fine, or sorry, to medium. I did a test run. It came out coarser. And then I went ahead and did a full course, the coarsest I could get. Now you see how this side is lined up with this side of the hole? That's because now it's now at the coarsest setting. And if I had the screw in that hole, it would be hitting that and it wouldn't let me turn it any further. So this would be the coarsest setting. So I did another run and it was even coarser. So success in my book, I'm done with it. So I'm going to take this off. I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to hold it. So using the 3/8 wrench, preferably the box end. This is called the box end, even though it's circular. And this is the opened end for obvious reasons because it's opened. And basically, or the closed end. I'm sure there's different words all over the United States for that. So boxed end, closed end. And you're going to, so this is a 3/8. I'm going to put it over the top. I'm going to put my finger on it to hold the screw. And now it should already be snug with my fingers, right? So I'm going to put this on over it and just try to hold the screw still. And I'm going to just snug this up with the wrench, just like that. So it's snug. So I didn't do it really hard. But now this nut keeps the screw from turning, which in turn would change our adjustment. So that's the purpose. This is a lock screw, okay? So now it's where I want it to be. I'm going to line this back up over the shaft again. Make sure it goes all the way down. I am going to put this back on. Turn it till it stops. Right there. Then I'm going to turn it backwards until the stopper lines up. Till the stopper lines up. Here it is. It's right through here. And I'm going to line up this side with this side of the screw. Right where the detents are. Okay, there you go. So that is literally the finest setting that it is. So I'm going to take the little screw and I'm going to put it back in. Slippery little sucker. And just snug it. And that's it. Now it is done and it's adjusted. So go ahead, put your jar on, do your thing, and use it to your heart's content. That is how you do the rough adjustment of your coffee grinder. And up here is where you do the finer one. And so it's at fine, as per the arrow. I want it coarser, so I have to turn it this way. So I can do medium. And now it won't turn any further because the raised stopper is now hitting the screw. And that's the purpose of the screw and the stopper. So now it's the coarsest it will go. And if I want to go back to fine, I just turn it in the direction of the arrow until it hits. And now it's at the finest setting. So I can do anything in between. And that's it. So these are the results of my tests when I did it. And this was my fine, my medium, and my coarse. And as you can see, the grain difference. Okay. And so when I did it 2 3/4 turn, it was even finer than that. So if that's what you like, then do it. I was okay with it, but I prefer this size. Plus, when I did it the 2 3/4 turn, it still sounded a little off to me, which I didn't like the sound. I mean, at least the metal wasn't rubbing, but it still sounded like it might be a shade too close. So that's why I went another 1/4 turn and ended up with this, and it is actually pretty good. So I'm happy with this one. And then the medium, you can see it's coarser, and then of course the coarse setting, you can see it's definitely. So I'm going to leave it with this, but this is the result I got for my fine, medium, and coarse. So in the end, so these are my test piles right there, right? My test samples. So in the end, that is how you do an adjustment for the KitchenAid A-9 grinder. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.